This is the part of Chicago that doesn't get talked about. Yes. Yeah, my mom was in federal penitentiary when she took that picture. Styling on them. I have a whole family here who I know needs protecting in a way that they've never been protected.
I'm a doctoral student organizing towards Black freedom. I really want my research grounded in how we can envision what safety looks like outside of law enforcement.
There's been a major development in the police shooting of 22-year-old African-American woman Rekia Boyd.
I committed to confronting this board, city council, and the mayor until y'all fire Dante Service.
Black women do a lot of thankless and undervalued work.
We taking back our community. We taking back our community.
Our entire existence is resistance.
It's just like an exacerbated level of commitment.
It's very new, this idea of this being work. This has always been life.
This is Black history that we are making. Even if we don't, our stories gonna make it.
So I have short opening remarks, and that I lived in Chicago up until last summer when I started to work at NMOC, and I have also spent a lot of time thinking about Chicago as this wonderful incubator for Black women's activism. So being asked to moderate this panel with all of you wonderful people was such a joy and a gift, and a reminder of how much I grew to love Chicago after moving there from California, complaining for the first 2 years about how cold it was, and then realizing summers are all worth it, the food makes it worth it, and the people make it worth it. So if we could begin by everyone kind of introducing themselves and their role in Unapologetic, and we can begin the conversation from there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Ashley O'Shea, and I am the director-producer of Unapologetic. I've lived in Chicago for like over 10 years now, which is wild. And I continue to live here and work as a cinematographer and director in documentary and otherwise.
So my name is Dr. Janaé Bonsu. In the film, I'm just Janaé Bonsu, trying to be doctor. And I was a Chicago transplant. I was in Chicago for 7 years and fell in love with the city. I'm still in love with the city. I am from Columbia, South Carolina, by way of Brooklyn, New York. And I'm currently in the Myrtle Beach area of South Carolina, and I work as the director of research and advocacy at a national policy and research think tank called the National Black Women's Justice Institute. And yeah, just super honored to have been a part of the film that is Unapologetic.
Hey, I'm Bella Boz. Boz is BAHHS. That's Black Ancestors Here, Healing Society. Not Boz, not presidents, not police. The revolutionary arts activist and one of the subjects of
Thank you for your wonderful introductions. And one of the first questions that I have for you, Ashley, is what drew you to this story, and also your process for following the two subjects and figuring out what is the story that you wanted to tell and what is the story that is developing from their lives.
Yeah, so I came to the story in the fall of 2015. I had recently graduated from Northwestern and was really just trying to figure out what I was going to be doing professionally with my life in my career. And that was around the same time that a lot of young Black people were continuing to organize around the police killing of Rekia Boyd here in Chicago. And if you were here at the time, it was very difficult to there was no way you were really living in the city without knowing what was going on with groups like BYP 100 and Let Us Breathe and Asada's Daughters, especially because they were so young and focused at the time. And so I began just ideating about what a film would look like, looking at these organizations through this Black queer feminist lens and this perspective of Black women in a way that I had never really seen documented when talked about Black social movements in my formal education. And so I just sent a cold email to Janaé first, and because she was the lead of the Chicago chapter of BYP 100 at the time. And from there, I found out, she was beginning her studies at the Jane Addams College of Social Work, but she was 24 at the time. I can't remember anymore. She was 24 at the time, and I was just really astounded that she was leading this, what I saw as like a huge organization, while also matriculating through her first semester in this PhD program. And so that was my initial interest. I really actually only thought about it as a short film at the time, like a character piece following Janaé through this first semester. And then a few months after that, the tape of the killing of Laquan McDonald came out, and the city just like erupted. And it was very clear at the time that, or maybe it wasn't to other people, but to me it was clear that this was like a hallmark moment that might not come again for 5-10 years. And it kind of just felt like a snowball effect was kind of happening with all of these different police killings and how organizers were being treated by the police, but how they were continuing to just like stand in their identity and really continue to forefront Black women and femmes and queer folks at the front of this movement. And so that's when I started to think, okay, maybe this is bigger than just a few months. Maybe this is bigger than just Janaé. And so that's when I started talking to other leaders in the movement, and met Bella shortly thereafter at one of her performances at a rally. And 4.5 years later, we had a film.
Janaé, could you talk more about your experience and also explain BYP 100 to those who might not be familiar with the organization? And also how you juggled being an activist and a PhD student, because I'm finishing up my PhD at Northwestern. So I was like, go Cats, and working full time. And I can't imagine just the work and the labor and the mental capacity and the emotional capacity.
So yeah, like Ashley said, I was and am a member of an organization called BYP 100, stands for Black Youth Project 100. It was kind of organically founded in the aftermath of the acquittal of George Zimmerman for killing Trayvon Martin. There were 100 Black queer youth in the room that kind of was together when the decision came down, and transformed a moment of pain into power in building this organization of young Black activists 18 to 35, who just like organizes for justice and freedom through what we call a Black queer feminist lens. And so I initially moved to Chicago in 2013 to start a master's program in social work. And I wasn't, previously like embedded in social movements. I didn't consider myself an activist or an organizer. But I had found BYP 100. It felt like divine intervention as I was like trying to figure out what my role in social change looked like. I knew I had these things that I felt passionate about, especially issues related to criminalization and in the prison industrial complex, just from my own family and my own community. And yeah, when I found BYP 100, I found a political home. And in a city like Chicago that has such a rich history of organizing and just power building, it just was a perfect storm. And so I got involved in BYP 100 at the top of 2014, and developed as an organizer, developed as a leader. And yeah, when Ashley approached me a couple years into that journey of organizing, you know, like she said, she thought it was like a short film project. I was really intrigued by the idea of a film kind of focusing on what I knew was the reality of so many women and Black women and femmes, queer folks that was leading the movement that I was a part of in real time. And I had not seen that highlighted before. So to be a part of what I thought was a little 15-minute little thing, I was like, yeah, sure, I would love to be a part of it. And who knew it would turn out to be a feature film, and even more honored to be a part. But in terms of like doing this labor of love that is like organizing for Black liberation while kind of trying to navigate the polar opposite space, I feel like, that is academia, was difficult to say the least. You know, I had many moments, as you know, folks might see in the film, where I just look very stressed and on the brink of tears, if not crying, you know, just trying to stay true to the fact that, you know, my research, just like my organizing, is through a Black queer feminist lens. My scholarship centers, you know, the folks that are marginalized. So Black women, transgender, non-conforming people. You know, I studied the intersection of state violence and interpersonal violence in this academic space where we're not highlighted, where we're not cared about, where the default is this kind of like white experience, this white gaze. And so it was important to me to keep chugging along, because I felt like my scholarship was an intervention in this, you know, super whitewashed space that needed to happen. And for me, it wasn't a choice of whether I needed to choose to be involved in and active in social movements right now versus just focus on my studies. Like I feel like I had to do both, and I did, and it was a challenge. It wasn't easy. That's why I really think that Black joy and self-care is super important. Having community, sisterhood, all of that, I wouldn't have survived without, you know, without my comrades, without my sisters. But yeah, for you finishing your PhD and working full time, I know it's hard, but it is possible. And you know, you gotta take care of yourself along the way. That sounds cliche, but it is true. It's the best I got for you in terms of advice.
Bella, can you share how you came to rap as a method for expressing creativity and activism, as well as why creative expression is so crucial to Chicago's community?
Yeah, I've been a writer my entire life. That's how I make sense of the world. That's how I create portals to other worlds. So I've been a writer, a poet for as long as I could write, as long as I could tell my story. I've been doing it through poetry. I came to rap, but you know, I grew up in the hip hop community. So poetry and rap are very kin. So it was like a matter of me becoming friends with people who were in the studio, and it was like, oh, I can put my poems, like I can record them as rap, so it's music, and that'll be more accessible. You know, people will hear it, people will receive the messages. And Chicago, again, like Chicago is a very special place as far as culture, as far as building strong thinkers, people just will think for themselves and not take what's given to you surface level. We have a very strong poetry community, a very strong hip hop community. When I grew up in those communities, I was very inspired by my peers. There are actually a lot of the people who are, you know, I guess, kind of background and unapologetic, but were very forefront in the actual movement. And these are people I respect. I look up to, not just as organizers. It was like first and foremost as artists. You know, like we were going to the same poetry events. We were in the inspired by each other. We were already talking about social justice issues in our poems and our raps. And then Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Ferguson uprisings happened. So all of these young, enthused, and very socially conscious Chicago artists started using their art as activism, as advocacy, or using whatever platform they had grown as artists to support the Ferguson uprisings and whatever we could do to lend some solidarity to what was going on in Ferguson. And yeah, it just felt like I couldn't do anything else. Like I couldn't ignore what was going on. I couldn't just rap about anything else. Right? This was what was important to me. This is the story that I needed to tell. This was the perspective that I needed to uplift. And again, Chicago had an audience that was just willing and ready to receive those messages and to be moved by it. Right? So at one point in Chicago, I was really like the most called upon artist to show up, to protest, to move crowds, to specifically for that purpose. So that you can rap about what's going on, and talk about what's going on in a way that will move people to do something, to act. So yeah, it was like a lifelong, again, it was like divine intervention. This moment happens, and the purpose is clear. Why you've been writing your whole life, why you've been a storytelling your whole life. This is why.
Morgan, can you speak a bit about your involvement as producer, as well as your work with the Tribe, whose mission is to reshape the narrative of Chicago?
So I moved to Chicago with a good friend of mine who's from the west side of Chicago, where Bella is from, to start this project, The Tribe, with the mission to reshape the narrative of Black Chicago, because we were seeing how Chicago was being covered on the national stage and even the international stage with so much fly-in coverage about on Black crime. And we really, just young, passionate, revolutionary abolitionist spirit, decided to take this on. We had no money, no investors, or nothing like that. I think looking back on it, it was very much in the same spirit of the movement for Black lives that was going on at the time that we decided to do this work. And it just so happens that Ashley was working on Unapologetic and had been filming for at least a year by the time I got to the city to work on The Tribe. And I took a look at her demo and I saw footage of Bella and Janaé, and it very much resonated with the work that I was doing and trying to do with The Tribe. So I actually ended up launching The Tribe and telling Ashley, I want to work on this film, but can I start tomorrow after I launch this publication real quick? And so The Tribe and Unapologetic for me has like the same trajectory in terms of its growth over the next, 4.5 years that I would be working on both of these projects.
Unapologetic is a film that centers Black women and Black queer feminist activism. How does this film approach the erasure of Black women's experiences of police brutality, and what do you hope viewers take away from this narrative?
I mean, I can start, and I'm sure everyone has something to say that is a part of this film. But the first word that comes to my mind in the question of like why Black men and boys are centered in the narrative of state violence is this word called misogynoir, and that is the the hatred of not just women but Black women in particular. I mean, we can say hatred, we can say disregard, we can say marginalization of Black women. And misogynoir shows up within Black communities, within like outside of the race. It shows up in media, and it is sometimes a conscious thing. It is sometimes a subconscious thing. It is very normalized to disregard Black women and girls' experiences, leadership, thoughts, insights, etc. And so, in turn, because it's normalized, because on some level to some people it's subconscious, that you see a difference in outrage and urgency when we see a modern day lynching video of you know someone like Eric Gardner dying in front of our eyes, or I mean, I can name a number of people, right, that we have lost, a number of Black men that we have lost publicly, that has sparked national, global outrage. And meanwhile, Rekia Boyd, we had to fight really hard in Chicago for people to know her name, for people to say her name. And yeah, I mean, it's just such a systemic and cultural thing to disregard Black women. And I think Unapologetic is, and I hope will continue to be, just like a standing intervention, counter narrative to this status quo that really says, like, not only does Black women matter, not only do Black women experience a lot of the same systemic violence, a lot of the same state violence, a lot of the loss of life at the hands of police, the people that are supposed to, protect and serve. But we're also leading the fight to push back against that. We're not, every single activist or organizer that you see in Unapologetic, including Bella and I, but there's so many more. This documentary could have been about anybody. They're still working right now in the city. We don't just fight for and care about Black women and femmes and trans folks, non-binary folks. We're fighting for all Black people, right? And I think that shines through in Unapologetic. And like I said, I really believe that Unapologetic is this narrative shifter that is pushing back against the misogynoir that is so prevalent in our society at large, both at the individual level and just systemically, like I said, in media and all of that.
I'm about to put narrative shifter on our poster.
As you should, period.
I mean, I could speak, I think, from maybe a media standpoint that, I think outside of the representation that I was experiencing myself just as a young Black individual in terms of Black women's deaths, it was just not something that was being centered really at all in media that was being put out there in terms of the movement for Black lives. And so for me, when thinking about a longitudinal piece like this, it was about not just how can we explain the nuances of this death in a way that honors Rekia and honors other Black women that have tragically lost their lives in similar ways, but how can we also deepen the understanding of people that are doing work around these deaths at the hands of the police, because it's going to affect a Black woman or a queer organizer or anyone outside of like this main idea of patriarchy. Those deaths affect us differently than they do than the deaths of Black males. Not saying that we aren't impacted significantly by those deaths as well, but understanding the nuances of Black womanhood and everything that is taken away when lives are tragically lost like this. I think you come into this work differently than you would than you do when it's just Black men. And so for me, it was about really deepening our understanding of that, because I know that growing up as a Black girl into a Black woman, there's so many nuances to how we take care of ourselves and the community and our family and friends around us. And I felt like there's such a tenderness and delicacy that the mass media or even other like long form films, long form documentaries, I just felt like there wasn't that care being put into it. And that was just a gap that I was seeing that, you know, I know is fueled by patriarchy and by this desire to always look at that as the default, but that was not the lived reality of so many people around me. And so yeah, I think especially how we center Rekia's death in this film, it's even, I would say it's kind of more forefronted than Laquan's, and I feel like that was partially because there was already so much media out there about Laquan McDonald's death, that it needed to be included, but we still felt as a team that Rekia Boyd's death really allowed us to get into those nuances in a way that we haven't, that other mass media maybe hasn't done before. So.
One of the major themes in this documentary is the role of Black mothers and Black mothering. How did this experience of filming with your mothers impact your relationship with them?
For me, I am really fortunate that, well, I'm grateful that my mother got to be a part of this film and the filming, especially being that my mom is not in Chicago. She's in South Carolina. Actually, you know, took a trip down to South Carolina to be able to capture at least, you know, this other aspect of me. So, you know, being able to capture some of my family and including, you know, I sit down with my mom, which was very special to me. And, you know, I feel like the experience of my mom being a part of Unapologetic was really significant in the sense that, you know, in the film, she actually came out publicly in a way that she had never done before. My mom she identifies as queer, and she had never, ever done that, you know, publicly. And so even my other family members watching the film was like, oh, shoot, that's news to us. We didn't know, you know. So it was a really pivotal moment for her and her growth, like as a person. And in the film, she said that, you know, her ability to embrace and be proud, unapologetic, dare I say, about her identity had to do with me and the work that I was doing, the space that I was taking up in the company I was keeping in this very unapologetic Black queer feminist, you know, space. And so yeah, I was very proud of her in that, and I feel like even though she was like in the aftermath very nervous about what she had done, and nervous about how it would be perceived, I was just so proud of her and continue to be. And yeah, just very, very glad that she got to be included because she was and continues to be a very instrumental part of my life. Like I said, like I mentioned before, like I went into, in terms of like my educational trajectory, social work, and, you know, me wanting to, you know, find my role in social change and the betterment of my people, like that came from her. You know, she has a heart of gold. She's been a mental health professional for 20 plus years, and yeah, just very fortunate that she got to be a part of this. And now, as I am less than 2 weeks away of becoming a mother myself, you know, I am, you know, I look at all of the things that unapologetic means to me, just even from the title to what the film strives to represent. And you know, I'm bringing a, you know, Black male into the world, got XY chromosomes, who knows what his gender identity end up being, but you know, I'm just using he pronouns for now. I want to raise a young Black boy who doesn't succumb to this default subconscious patriarchal idea that Black women are secondary, Black women don't matter as much as Black men. Like I just want to turn all of that upside down on its head in raising this boy. And so, again, I just really think that Unapologetic has kind of just, I don't know, concretized my commitment to spreading the gospel that is Black queer feminism, starting with my home, starting with my own child. So yeah, that's what I'll say about motherhood in this film, for me. And I was just also inspired to see Bella and her mom's relationship in the film. That was really special. So I'm gonna shut up and let Bella talk about it.
Yeah, so having my mother in the film, that took a lot for me. That took a lot for us to get to a point where I felt like, okay, this is something where um, that makes sense, right? Like, I was very much so trying to keep things, keep Ashley a little at distance, keep Ashley, keep Morgan, keep the film being a little, a little distant. Like, let me give y'all my political ideas and things like that, my political commentary. You can film me at these events, but like all that personal, real personal stuff, I don't know. You could be the feds. I don't know. My mother did time in the feds. We're not trying to subject her to that again, okay? Um, but my mother actually, when she met Ashley, was very trusting of her, and that's new. Like, my mama don't trust nobody. Again, she did time in the feds, so to her, anybody could be the feds. Um, so I was very cautious of, like, let me not even put cameras around you. Let me respect your boundaries. And she was like, I would tell Ashley my story. Like, she felt the bond. She connected with her herself. So there's no way I could have made my mother do anything she didn't want to do. If it was like, hey, do it for me. No, my mama was not going to do anything she did not want to do. So she wanted to tell her story to Ashley. And that was very empowering in its own right? Like, that was led me to create the Sister Survivor Network, led me to want to create a platform where my mother could be comfortable telling her story in front of cameras, in front of people, in a way that would impact some things, would impact some change. Because she has a very important story to tell, right? Like, there's no me, there's no my activism, there's no my rap, there's no anything that I give, anything that I produce is because my mother produced me, right? So the relationship to mothering is what this film is really all about, what our work is really all about. Like, as Black mothers in this country, like, it's never been an American thing to care about Black mothers, right? Like, it's very, like, we were just the other question you asked about why Black men are the center of conversations about, the present industrial complex and police and state violence. It's not American to care about Black mothers, right? It's very American to not care about Black mothers, right? Like, the exploitation of Black motherhood, of Black women's labor, of Black women's actual labor and physical labor, is what this country is built on, right? Like, the exploitation of our children, of our work. So anything that we are talking about when we are talking about changing the systems in America, it is very much so changing the relationship to Black mothers in America, changing the relationship to how Black motherhood is experienced in this country, right? Like, if it was white mothers who were losing their children at the rates that Black mothers are losing their children, if it was white mothers whose children were growing up in the type of poverty that Black children are growing up in, like, it would be a very different response for this country. All right, so it's crucially important, and I'm very grateful that Ashley knew just how important it was to capture our relationships to our own mothers, and let that inspire somebody else, and let that move somebody else, and let somebody else who never really thought about the relationship between the activists in the street and their mothers, right, who maybe think that we are unmothered, right, when we are out here and demanding justice and demanding rights, like that we are somehow unmothered, like no one is raising us. Like it is because we are raised by incredible mothers that we are out here.
Ashley, from the perspective of the director, what influenced your decision to include Bella and Janae's mother in this narrative and deciding that that was the story to highlight in this narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a very natural progression when I was realizing that I wanted to include their moms in the story. I think partially because just spending time with both of them, I realized that their mothers had significant influence not only on their upbringing but on who they were as women and professionals at the time. And so, like Bella was saying, I just knew that they didn't exist in a vacuum or come to this the people that they were becoming without some sort of influence. And so, myself also being raised by a Black mother and knowing like she was the person that even saw something in me as young as like 14 years old wanting to do filmmaking and was the person that pushed me and put me in like every type of program to start cultivating that craft. And it's the reason why I got to the point of even making Unapologetic. I think it just started, I was just like, oh, this is something that needs to be explored. And so, yeah, I think once I met their moms and just, yes, I was very nervous meeting both of their mothers because I knew how important they were to both of them. And I also knew that both Janaé and Bella's mom had parts of their story that I think were tied directly to them, but were not necessarily the easiest things to talk about. So I really tried to tread as carefully as possible. And yes, Bella is correct in that she was not trying to give me access to her mom. Like I legit was like, just tell her it's for you. She was like, she doesn't care about that. So the fact that we got to that point, I really think just was meant to be for the film. And I think I hopefully helped them to see, I think from what I've heard, helped both Janaé and Bella's mom to see how important they were to their daughters. And I think that's something that Black mothers also don't necessarily hear enough about or realize enough. And so I think including it in the film is important in that way as well. So hopefully other Black women watching can think about their relationship to their mothers and how that can keep influencing them and having an impact on them, and just opening up a pathway to conversation, because I think a lot of times we don't have that intergenerational piece where we're just talking to our moms about how they've influenced us and like learning about their lives. Like it's not done enough. So
Can I also just add that like police violence, state violence, mass incarceration is a crisis to Black motherhood. Like, I just want to name that explicitly. Like, when we talk, even if we center Black men in the narrative, you think about who are these people's mother? Who did they leave behind? Whose soul is hurting because of their disappearance, because of their kidnapping? Right? Like, who's carrying that every single day? The same people who carried them for 9 months, right? And their Black daughters, their Black sisters, their Black, like, so it's all tied in. Even if we talk about men as the center, the most impacted somehow, it's like, how dare you not acknowledge their mothers? We heard for 9 minutes. For 9 minutes, we heard. Y'all know what I'm trying to say right now? I really don't even.
George Floyd. Yeah.
We heard this man yell out for his mother. Like, so to even talk about what's happening and not acknowledge the pain that this is to Black mothers, right? To look at Janaé and think how beautiful it is that she is carrying carrying this life inside her, and to know the world that we exist in, and like this is what we're fighting for, because we know like our children are going to grow up in this world. Like this is about Black motherhood. Like it's no way, it's no way to separate it.
Because of, living in Chicago, how much I love Chicago. And also, like, before I moved there, my mom was like, "You're gonna get killed. Look at the news." And I was just like, I gotta move there for school, so whatever. And then I was just like, oh, this, like, the tribe, a very different narrative once you're actually here. And so I kind of want to, like, a quick take on how you think Chicago is misrepresented and how you feel this documentary and your story changes how people might think Chicago still is even today.
So when I think of dominant narratives of Chicago, I mean, it's very much centered on, as I was mentioned before, so-called Black on Black crime, which is a term that I think movement work and Black journalists have now taken out of the dialogue. Now you're like, somebody says Black on Black crime, and everybody's like, what did you just say? So we've been successful in pointing out just how racist that term is. But I mean, we were just talking about Black mothers, and I think about the scenes between Bella and her mom, and like the work that does to really destigmatize families who have experienced incarceration, families who rep gangs. There's a scene where her mom says, "I'm rooted in this." And Bella says, "I learned how to organize from gang members." That's turning the whole narrative about gangs and, why Chicago is so violent. It's turning that on its head. It's inviting us to dig deeper into these ideologies of like why we think crime persists. We know why crime persists. There, this movement is calling for Black queer feminist leadership, but also just Black queer feminist ideologies of just like we should be investing in nourishing institutions. It's saying our institutions themselves are patriarchal and focus too much on punishment and power when we should be really nourishing communities, nourishing, education, providing housing for people. So, when we say feminists, that's what we mean. It's not just about centering Black women's stories and saying put us in positions of power. Is also just saying like we need to be leading through a Black queer feminist lens that's focusing on nourishing communities rather than punishing them.
Bella, I saw you repping the West Side, so you have to talk about it.
Yeah, so a lot of the people who talk about Chicago have no idea about Chicago at all. And even like a lot of the bad things about Chicago that could get a lot of attention, like your parents saying, you can't move there, you're gonna get killed, right? I think that's very frequent. I think those are common conversations with people who are going to Chicago. And it's sad. It's sad that people know exactly the extent of what Black communities, what Black mothers are experiencing as far as every single summer, like the numbers of people who are killed in Chicago, not just the summer, all through the winter too. But people know this, right? Like this is daily news. The counts, the body counts. How many kids were killed in Chicago this day in the summer? How many kids were killed in Chicago this weekend, right? Like, and it's still like a joke. It's still not taken seriously. It's still like, where is the aid? Like, where is the help? Where's the resources? Right? Like, all of this is going on. We have some of the biggest rap artists in the world. So if you listen to their music, you hear a lot of the the pain that's going on in our communities. You hear a lot of the reliance on drugs. You hear a lot of the reliance on drugs as medication and on drugs as an economy, right? As a way of making a living. You hear all of this, right? You see all of this in the news, and no one cares for real. No one cares for real. The solution here is always lock them up, lock them up, lock them up, lock them up, right? And that's why this film is so important, because it's letting you know that we are here and we are experiencing this, and we know how bad it is, and we know that this is not the solution. We have actually been here living through this, surviving through this. We know what keeps us alive. We know what resources we need that we do not have. All right. Like we're not dumb. We're not just here killing each other and it's just that, and we ain't got no sense and we don't know. Like, come on now. Like, we are living through some really unfathomable conditions. Some really unfathomable conditions. All right, and so much of the world has access to like so much of our pain. Again, it's documented, but it's documented in such a way where it's not humanizing at all. So you don't care about the people. You just think they're doing it to themselves. Right? Like we are people who come. My grandmother came here from Mississippi with nothing. Right? Like that's so many people's stories. Right? Like, and we give so much understanding. We give so much understanding to people like Ukrainians, right, who decide that they have to pick up arms to defend themselves because of the conditions that they're living in. We give so much understanding. We give so much mercy in how we view them and their situations. But you view what's going on, the wars that's going on in Chicago every single day, and you don't care about it, right? These kids being killed every day doesn't get that same type of like outcry or let's do something about it. The thing that you want to do to us is lock us up. Right? That's the thing that you want to happen to us. So the perception of Chicago is really, again, like we're a lot of the same people who were slaves, who were enslaved. You know, I come from a family of sharecroppers, right, who were enslaved at one point, right? It would be very un-American to care. It would be very un-American to care about what's going on with us, right? And so that's what we see here. We see America being America, America caring about who America cares about, and not caring about who America does not and has not ever cared about. But again, a great thing about this film is you see that that's not our reality. We care about each other deeply. We care about each other deeply. We want to protect each other. We want to change what's going on in our city. And when we say defund the police, like we're saying, we've thought it through, and this is what we need.
That kind of then segues into care and hope and like a quote, when your vision is bigger, you know where you're going. So Janaé and Bella, I'm very interested in the care work, care for yourself, care for your community, and then also Ashley, how you cared for yourself while filming and creating this documentary film, because even though you are behind the lens, you are still seeing what everyone else is experiencing.
Care for myself while making this film is a loaded question, because I was a young 20-something trying to get this vision out, but also like needing to make money to survive and pay my bills and cover basic necessities. So I was really kind of running myself ragged for the first year to 2 years of this process. Because I wasn't, like Morgan said, she came in about a year and a half after I began. So like that first year I was really, I was directing, I was producing, I was shooting, I was the sound person, like I was doing everything. I was like, every week I think at least going to an action or doing some type of filming with Janaé or Bella. So I naturally hit a burnout point, and I think once we started to transition into what is the story that we're trying to tell and whose story we're trying to tell, and kind of just dealing with all of these different components of what we had filmed, I knew that I needed to like take a step back and like understand what process I was even going through as a filmmaker, and also as a person who was also experiencing not only these police deaths, but also like had a personal look at like what organizers were going through, and how they were being mistreated by the institution and what was happening with their organizations internally. It just felt like a lot of imbalance. So I think that was one when I started to really build out a team, and kind of take off, not, move away from this idea that I had to have all the ideas in the forward motion as the director of the film, and why it was so important to have Morgan come on and other folks on our team like Ruben, who edited it, that were also young Black people that were also experiencing a lot of these same feelings and sentiments. And so that helped a lot, just like not being able to be in the edit room or out in the field and not feeling like I had this burden of proving why this was important, or how to even understand like the nuances of a situation was important, one. And I also, I think once we kind of leaned into telling more of just Janaé and Bella's story versus like trying to tell the story of the whole movement, that took a lot of the weight off. And I came to this understanding that, okay, these are two people that are growing up, going through their early 20s as well. So it wasn't as urgent all the time to always be there, to always capture everything, because, we wanted to just kind of follow the natural progression of their lives. And I also started going to therapy, which was a huge help. And because I really had this complex of like worrying about what organizers especially were going to think of this film once it came out. And how they were being portrayed to the world. So that really helped me to kind of get out of my head, and just focus on what struck me, what struck the people on my team, and I think just took a lot of the pressure off of it.
What would you tell yourself then, from the vantage point of today, and then also, what do you see for the future of this film?
What would I tell myself then? A lot of things. Quit that job earlier. No, but I think I would tell myself to not feel like I have to bear the weight of everything, which I know as fellow Black women on this call that is a tendency that we tend to have, even when we have people that are actively trying to support us. I think that especially going to a place like Northwestern, where so much of like your day-to-day is like you're kind of working independently or progressing independently and trying to like map out your entire life for the next 10, 20 years. I felt like I was like always trying to do that with Unapologetic, and there was just so much I didn't know about the space. I had only worked on shorts prior to this film, and I really had to kind of just sit at the feet of I guess my documentary elders, or just people that had gone through this process before, and just like give myself the grace to learn, and to be patient and not feel like I have to rush into the next thing or a big deal or something like that just because it's something that's being offered to me. I tried to always constantly do what was best, what I thought was best and what we thought was best for the film and for the people featured in it, and not necessarily what was going to progress our careers or make the biggest buzz. And that comes with a lot of challenges, and that comes with a lot of just like moments of trying to just like ground yourself in your identity and not necessarily what the industry is trying to push you to do. So I think just being more patient with myself and giving myself more grace at the different stages of the film process. And in terms of the future of this film, I hope that this isn't the only movement-based longitudinal film that ever exists in the world. I think there's, like Janaé and Bella have said, for every Janaé and Bella, there are like 10 other people that we could have featured. And even from the time we started in 2015, the movement has changed so much, especially in Chicago, and it looks different than it did back then. And so I hope that it's inspiring someone else to pick up a camera and start documenting who the leaders are now. And also for people that aren't filmmakers or media makers, that it just inspires them to think about where they are in their life now, what skills they have, what talents they have, and how they can bring that to whatever movement in their community, and not feel like they have to be this great orator or like, an MLK, Malcolm X type to get involved, because there's so many entry points now. So I hope the film just keeps inspiring people to get involved in that way. And yeah, I hope 5-10 years from now that it's a lot of all of what we talk about in the film will not be solved by then, but I know it will be historical in the sense of like it was capturing a moment in time in Chicago. And so I just hope it continues to give the city a good rep and inspires the next generation of Chicago organizers to keep going.
Janaé and Bella, I'm gonna remix that question a little and say, what did that moment of filming at that period in your life, how did it shape you to the work that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so for me, I think that this film covers a very important moment in time, both in the movement for Black Lives in Chicago more broadly, and in my life personally. I was ages 24 through I think 28 or 29 in the film, and there were so many things happening politically in the city. Like I think I would say it was the peak of my time as someone dedicated to like building movement power and organization towards Black liberation. Like there was just so many like watershed moments in the city at that time, that like, and lessons that I learned, not just about, how like best practices for direct action at the Chicago police headquarters, or like how city politics in Chicago works, but also just like building camaraderie and how to like protect each other when we are going up against the state. Like, there's a scene in the film where like I'm yelling my ass off at the board, and like we had a conversation before going in there, we being like everyone who's involved, like, if the police are trying to run up on you while you're trying to get your stuff, get your voice heard, we are going to build a human shield around you so that you can say what you got to say, right? Like that's community care to me. And I learned so much about what it looks like and what it means to care for people that you love, whether you're talking about your biological or chosen family and comrades. And so I've definitely taken those lessons of community care into my current life. I have personally, in the film, like part of my, story arc was me navigating school, being a PhD student, and I would definitely say that my experiences, in the street, I guess, and in the movement, like my scholarship, my academic work wouldn't have looked the same without it. Like my work in movement informed my work in the academy. And so I would say that's probably one of the biggest, shapers in, what my work ended up looking like, what it ended up meaning. Like I feel confident personally and politically about my dissertation, about the work that I ended up doing. And so that was really significant, and helped me be able to cross the finish line to be done with school, and me doing the work that I'm doing now. So yeah, I would definitely say, in some, the lessons that I learned within movement, and going up against like the political machines in Chicago, and really trying to learn about what it looks like to care for myself and others, is really what sticks with me today.
Yeah, I would just add that um, that time in my life, uh, I'm sure I will never forget it. Like I will always be molded and shaped by that young person who you see in Unapologetic, right? In a lot of ways, I feel like um, I'm becoming someone different, um, you know, and that's what life is. We've been many people. I was many different people before that time period too, and I'll be many different people after. Uh, but who that young woman was, right? Is very near and dear to me, right? Like the young woman who was celebrating her 23rd birthday in there, like, so 23-year-old Bella Boss is like, I feel like I owe so much to her, to who I'll be at 50, to who I'll be at 35, to who I'll be at 75, right? Like, she will always have a very special place. The things that she learned, the things that she discovered about herself, the things that she discovered about her community and the world, um, is sticking with me, in the best way. Like, I can I cannot think selfishly anymore, right? Um, I cannot unsee what I've seen. I cannot unhear what I've heard. I cannot unexperience what I've experienced. Um, and all of that has molded my view of the world, right? Like, so just how I see things, just how I understand things, how I understand myself, how I understand the people around me, um, is forever changed by the work that we did during those 4.5, 5 years in Chicago. Um, so yeah, how is it shaped right now? Like, who I am, the things that I write about, the things that I talk about, the things that I perform about still. It's just, my whole worldview is now like everything I'm examining through this Black queer feminist lens, right? Um, and that's not something that, even as a Black queer woman, that you necessarily have a Black queer feminist lens to look through the world, to see the world through, right? Like, we have a Black queer mayor who absolutely does not see the world through a Black queer feminist lens, right? Um, so just those teachings, and how we understand the conditions we are in, and just like how we change the conditions that we are in, or our capacity to change the conditions that we are in, right? I think I'll always look back on this film and remember that there was a time when very few people were saying things like defund the police, right? There was a time when very few people understood what the word abolition means in the 21st century, right? There was a time when very few people
there was a time when there was no language for mutual aid, right? There was a time when we were doing it and we didn't have a word for it, right? So I just think about uh, our capacity to change things, right? And remember that and remember our power. Like, no matter how discouraging things are, no matter how, the counter revolutionary the powers that be are, and how strong their tactics are for keeping things the same. I know that we are so very capable of coming up with revolutionary strategies to counter that and to mitigate that and to break through um, some of these walls, some of these systems um, that would like us to believe that they're impenetrable, right? That they are permanent, that they are going nowhere. Um, and so, yeah, very thankful to that young woman who showed me, to all of the young women, to Janaé, to Ashley, to Morgan, like to everyone. I don't even want to start naming people beyond that because then I'll miss somebody and somebody going like, no. But to everyone who proved to me, who showed me like in real time in my own lifetime, not like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, not, and these women are wonderful, but the Ella Bakers, the Fannie Lou Hamers, the Ida B. Wells, it's like, no, the Janaes, like the Ashleys, the Morgans, right? The ones who are right here, right now, making change that I can see. I can see it right now. Like, not, well, I have to imagine what the world was like then, and then now I know it's like this. Like, no, I know what the world was like 6 years ago, right? And I know that it's different. Even slightly, even if slightly, it is different. Like the conversations are different. The political environment is different, right? And so to know that and see that like change is still possible, right? Like growth is still possible. We haven't reached this post-racial society people talk about, or colorblind society. That's not real. Like, but real change is still possible right now. That's what I learned.
Morgan, your closing remarks in the same vein, like how this experience shaped you and how you also envision taking this into the future, particularly around your work with the tribe and then also future producer experiences.
You know, what you're asking really is a loaded question. I've been reflecting on so much. First of all, I want to say, Bella, that we've done interviews where you've been in a different place where you couldn't speak of yourself as living to 75 and things like that. So I just want you to know I was smiling to hear you imagine yourself and speak on that, like that this moment will inform, who you are when you are 75. Because I'm glad that you're thinking of yourself in that way. I think it speaks to like, that you're in a place of healing and optimism and hope, and I love that for you. For me, this film, wow, it really was a coming of age journey for all of us. Like we all grew up while this film was taking place. Um, for me, kind of being in my late 20s as this film started, that is a transition point for a lot of women. A lot of things were changing about myself, my body, hormones, all types of stuff. And then we're confronted with this moment and you have to act. When I went to film school, I wasn't thinking that I would mostly be focusing my life and my work on social justice documentaries and journalism. I was actually critiquing journalism and thought that documentary was like a superior form of storytelling. So I never imagined myself of being a publisher because I saw the way that journalists were losing people, that, like corporate journalism was really doing a lot of harm, focusing on putting narratives out quickly and not so much focusing on impact. I was very, very critical of journalism, and journalism, journalists are not liked. We've learned that. Bella now writes with me for the tribe, and we learned that journalism it's really a tough field to go into because yeah, just so much harm has been done, especially in terms of relationships with Black people and Black communities, that not only are we trying to reshape narratives, but we're trying to repair relationships. These are all the things that I'm confronted with while doing this work, and it's not easy. And then on the back end, I'm also trying to find a way to sustain myself in this work. So I was working on building the tribe, working on producing and raising money for Unapologetic when neither of those projects were paying me. I was really not paying myself a living wage. I was paying myself below a minimum wage and relying on family and friends and community to really lift me up and support me, and working pretty much on fumes and on passion and on mission. And that's the story of so many of us who had dreams of doing other things. Bella's an artist. I'm looking at Issa Rae and people like that and being like, that's what I envision myself doing. And here we are responding to this moment because this is what we have to do. If we don't respond to this moment, then we may not have chances to be Issa Rae or Ava DuVernay, or, we have to ensure our future. So that's what I was really confronted with at this moment in time. And it's changed the course of my life. It's helped me reflect and evaluate my own progressive politics. When I didn't have this language, I wasn't confronted with this reality because I did grow up with some privilege. I had never been to a prison. I've never had to experience a family member being incarcerated in the way that Janaé and Bella have. And so I really had to stand in my privilege and work through my ideas of progressive politics and why I had never even thought about incarcerated families in the way that I should have been doing throughout my life. And I think that's where a lot of people catch this film, like we see in the opening scene. If this reality isn't in front of you, it's so easy to just keep living life the way you're living life. And it's only until you are placed into a situation that you usually try to confront it. The movement for Black Lives was that for me. So yeah, it definitely changed who I am.
I just want to thank you so much, Bella, Janaé, Morgan, Ashley, for being here and also giving us this gift of Unapologetic, because I know for me that I will return to it time and time again to, again, as you said, Morgan, reflect on my own privileges and the fact that these are experiences that I might not have thought about in ways that I should be thinking about, and also the gift of being invited into your story, Bella and Janaé, and the stories of your communities and your networks. And I do think that's something that is very important and also very touching when it comes to the stories of Black women, because we are not the center of so many stories when we should be.
Thank y'all so much.